And we are recording. Hello, Amber. How are you?
I'm good. Michael, how are you doing
I'm doing
today?
fantastic. So before we get going and talk about today's topic, I just want to ask you a little bit about your background and kind of who you are. So just introduce yourself to the audience out there.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm Amber Price, and I work with people to provide clarity on such things and using, a mindfulness attitude and gratitude, and also just the insight and really connecting to who they are and what they're destined to be. Their life's purpose, I guess, is really what I'm kind of tapping into with that. And then I just kind of came from this from HR. Like, really, I was an HR background, operations management, really focused into the healthcare industry. And so, of course, there was a lot of confusion and stuff going on, and a lot of people working in what they thought was their life purpose, but really it turned out to be, it just wasn't quite in alignment with what they were doing. So a lot of like unsatisfied people, or just, I think people are just looking for fulfillment, fun and fulfillment. And to be able to get to that, you really have to kind of drop some barriers. So that was my background in there. And then just within the last 10 years, really just kind of branching off and discovering my own path and my own purpose. And I started to work with people and do this, and it's really kind of kicked off from there.
Wow, that is so cool. Like, it was almost tailor made. Like because basically HR, you're dealing with people all the time. And now
Yeah.
you just continue that, but you're actually working on a deeper level of helping them out, which is so important. Like clarity and life purpose, I think are the biggest areas or biggest struggles that people face in this lifetime is to
Yes.
figure out, well, I think in every lifetime, it's like, what am I here? Those are like the big fundamental questions. Why am I here? What am I doing? What is my life purpose?
Mhm.
Those type of things. And I personally been haunted by those questions for years. I struggled with it. I still do. I'm,
Yes.
I'm doing my podcast, but am I on the right path? Am I doing it? I constantly think about that all the time. It's one of my biggest stresses.
Yeah.
And, through my own self, through doing consultations, those are some of the questions people ask me is like, okay, so what am I doing? What about this job? Things like that. So what are some of the things that you find that people are really looking for? I know it's clarity, but is it clarity just for their life's purpose, their job, or is it a combination of things?
I think it really is a lot of things put together. If I can kind of go back and think about where I started and where I am today, I think a lot of people were coming for clarity on this life and what's after this life. So there's that aspect to it. I think that ultimately what it's kind of evolved into is I just need clarity on myself, is what I hear the most. So, like a lot of people, and I'm very, very intrigued by this because most people get confused and don't have clarity because they're trying to live in the lifestyle other people are trying to put them in, right? Okay, yeah. I can totally relate to that, right? And so you become in this constant like robotic, like, I'm doing this, am I supposed to be doing this, is this fun, is this fulfilling? And then what is my version of success? Because really, my parents might have had a different idea, your parents might have had a different idea, and then when it boils down to us, our ideas of success is completely different. Therefore, we're confused and we're not in alignment with that. So to answer your question, I feel like ultimately people just want clarity on hearing what it is they're supposed to be doing and drown out the noise of everybody else. So that could be in love, career, education. A lot of folks are out there and they're maybe taking school education for one thing, and the whole time this little voice in their head is saying, you picked the wrong thing, man. Like, you are in the right, you should have did this, not that. So I think that sometimes we just need to give ourselves permission to say, okay, reboot, like, this was okay. I had to do it to get to this space, but now I have to be honoring myself and get it over here into this space. So I'm going to say the biggest piece of clarity is on how do I connect myself to listen to what I'm supposed to be doing in whatever area of life that is.
So it's basically trusting that little small inner voice that
Yeah.
it's so small. For me, it was so small. And it's interesting, I can be very clear for somebody else, but for myself, Oh, I couldn't read a newspaper. That's how bad it is. Like, I mean, that's how, like, that's what my life story was. And I can look back on all the different things I've done over my years and how many different careers I've done. And it's just that same thing. And a lot of them, the careers I've done wasn't really out of, there wasn't that alignment. I knew I was lying. It was just basically because everybody told me that's what I should be doing. And I did it. And I mean, granted, there were some great things about it and it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. I mean, it wasn't in line with what I wanted in my life. And I
Mhm.
struggled with that. And it showed in my work. And I just thought I was feeling so fake. And,
Mhm.
interesting enough, I was working in television, which is all about fakeness. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So, I mean, I struggled with that for years. And it was just interesting after this whole COVID thing, it really gave me the time to kind of reflect back and go, you know what? I didn't like that at all. I mean, I enjoyed, I had a lot of success in certain things. I did a lot of great stuff, but at the same time too, I was never happy. I never was happy at it. Doesn't matter how much money that, well, I shouldn't say that, but I'm saying, yeah, if the money was a little bit better, yeah, I probably would have continued. But hey, but in general,
Yeah.
yeah, I just find that struggling with life purpose and a soul's purpose too, as well. I think that's one of the core issues that a lot of people are facing, especially now. And I think you must be so busy. Like people must be calling you up right now, especially during COVID. Like, where's my life going? And they're probably having questions like, what's happening? Like, this
Mhm.
just completely shut everybody's life down.
It really did. 2020 was always set to be that year that we were going to be faced with having to lose things that no longer vibrated at our level. We had to ascend into areas that we have been fearful of ascending into, and that might be in changes of relationships. Like maybe you had a tumultuous relationship with your spouse, and now all of a sudden 2020 really set that on fire. There was no getting around that. Like there was just one thing after another, and then you were almost kind of forced, but also you felt comfortable in the choice or decision that you had to make. So it really is kind of, I always say the universe shook the rug this year, and it's kind of like whatever lands is what lands. But a lot of it is shocking. So I think people weren't really anticipating that the world was going to respond to this global health event the way that it did. I think there's a lot of people that thought, oh no, they'll never shut things down. They'll never cause this. And I think that kind of shook the reality of what we thought we were, safe in the world of every day. We knew this was going to happen. We kind of just that mundane thing. But when that happens and you realize that anything is possible, and the leaders of the world are saying anything's possible, here we go, we're setting new trends and we're setting new processes and things like that. What it does for us as humans and individuals is it really makes us question if there's a greater purpose at large here, then how come I can't take my little itty bitty life and make something change to get into that? There's a lot of people who have been forced to go online with their businesses that they never ever dreamed could be, online. Let's say a yoga teacher. Well, they never would have dreamed they could do online services. When I told them that they would have to, they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, you have to teach yoga in person, Amber. I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think,
what I'm finding. Yep.
yeah. So people are coming to me, and all over the world, people are calling it. It's not. That's the biggest point I want to mention is it's not just a Canadian thing. It's not an American thing. This is all over the world. People are
Yes.
calling and saying, I need clarity on this, because guess what? We're all the same. At the end of the day, we all have, maybe partners or children or jobs or finances or health things that we need to discover. But it all boils back down to, what do you want to fight to try to keep? And what do you want to surrender to open up new opportunities? And I think that's when I pose that question to people, it kind of makes them think for a minute, like, wait, I actually have a
That's pretty
choice.
deep. That is really deep. I mean, it's so simple, but when when you're saying that, I was like, wow, what do I
Yeah.
want to fight for? And what do I want to keep? And like, what do I want to get rid of? And it's like, I was like thinking in my own head, my own wheels were spinning at the same time.
Yeah.
So brilliant. That is such a way to look at it. It's just to
And
see that. Yeah.
I had to do that myself. I had to say, like, but the thing I always say, am I going to die on this hill for this? Like, that's what I say internally. I'm like, am I dying on this hill today for this? Or am I okay to surrender this? And that's kind of what I do every day. And so I pose that question to people that come for services. And it does shake them, because they don't realize that it is something as simple and in control as that. Like, why wouldn't I have thought of that? Why am I not letting myself think I have a choice?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things is choice. And I
Yeah.
think one of the problem I know myself I faced is just the choice itself. Am I making the right choice? And I know so many people, we struggle. It's like, do I go down this path or do I go down this path? And from my understanding, just go down any path. It'll eventually, like my life has been, it's not like a straight line. It's been like zig over here, zag over there. I go like, instead of going back, then I'm back to the center. Then I go all the way over here. And then
Yeah.
it's always like a big zigzag through life. Instead of going down the straight path, it's always been the zigzag, but you just go down it anyways. And eventually you always go back to center, or the universe kind of moves you back to center too, as well.
I remember that's really what it's about. I remember I didn't read much as a child. I read a lot now. But when I was in elementary school, I remember when we got to go down to the library, I thought, oh, no, I have to go to the library. I have to act like I'm interested. I have to find something that I'm going to bring home and write a book report. And like, I just dreaded it. But there was one thing that always stuck out to me besides Curious George, because that one was always a popular one, right?
Yes.
But that Curious George too was all about like exploring and doing things, and he didn't care about how much trouble he got into or if someone cared about what he did. So that was a really good lesson as well. But the one, I don't know if it was Nancy Drew or not, but you know the novels that you say, okay, you've read to this point, and at the bottom you can either keep reading or turn to page 72, and like it takes you to a whole new. Did you ever read those ones?
No, I don't. No, again, I
Gosh.
was very much the same way like you. I didn't read much. I had a little bit of learning disability when I was younger, so I dreaded reading. So like reading was not for me, was not my sort of thing. It wasn't until like late high school or even college that I really started enjoying reading. So those sort of things, like, yeah, but I do see what you're saying. I do get the point on that. So that's pretty cool. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting.
That's the choice you make. You're like, okay, do I want to keep going down this path, or do I want to see what page 72 brings? Do I want to turn down turn down here? But I think for reading, for me, it was too silent in my mind. So back then, when I was getting all this insight, when I was alone and being able to read, it was a form of meditation, right? When you're focused on reading, you are focused on being open. So to me, it opened up opportunities for energy to come in. So I was very distracted by that, and it wasn't a good pastime for me. But now, having been, a little bit more experienced and later in life, you become aware of, okay, you're intentionally reading something, but you're doing it with the intention that you want to either better yourself, or you want to get more experience, or you need that meditative release and kind of go into science fiction or something. So that was my point, was I just couldn't get into that space without being disrupted by all of the insight that was coming to me, I guess. Yeah.
So how do you receive your information? I know you haven't really talked about it, but as far as your abilities and things like that, like how are you receiving your information? Is it purely on a psychic level, or is it something else that you're tuning into? Are you communicating now, this again, communicating with their higher selves, their soul? And maybe is there a difference between the higher self and the soul, or are they both the same thing? So maybe you can clarify on that.
Yeah, how I have been receiving information is coming from, I always say the universe when I don't know if it's someone specific, like grandparent, loved one, angel guide, because it kind of comes as an overwhelming, like just larger message, very profound, and you need to make movement on that. So when that comes like that to me, I feel like what I'm getting is a collective of their spiritual team. So their ascended masters, their guides, their angels, maybe their loved ones, deities, whatever, and then getting that kind of bigger message. When I'm working with people and having clarity sessions, I call upon their higher self, and their higher self is just the version of the soul to me. So that's how it's been explained to me over the last 10, 15 years of working with it, is your higher self and your soul are timeless, they're endless, like they don't end. There's an affinity to them, and that ultimately it's that secret little message box that we have at any moment to be able to have those messages and guidance of clarity or insight that we need to make this physical life easier. So when we're not in this physical form and we do become in the spiritual form, that higher self is what's left. So our ego that says fear, worry, resentment, hatred, all of those things, that goes away, and then our soul or higher self remain, and everything, you know, is the bigger picture, and you can kind of come to terms with ultimately love and connection.
So do you guide the, do you get the message yourself, or do you guide the individual at the session to try to connect with their higher selves themselves, or you do like a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. So depending on where someone is in their own spiritual journey and their development, somebody could be saying, look, Amber, I really just need your clarity. Here's my goals. This is what I want. Or maybe I have no idea what I want. So can you help me have some clarity on what it is I'm even here for? All I know is I need to see you. I don't know what I'm doing here. That happens more times than not. But,
oh, I believe that.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know why I'm here. And I'm like, we'll figure it out. Don't worry. But I think in that time, we're dealing with those messages of me connecting to their higher self and helping them develop that plan with their ego, with their higher self, so that they can have a better, more unified experience and be connected to body, mind, and soul. So when we're connected to our body, mind, and soul, we become grounded. And when our soul, body, and mind are grounded, we have the ability to see things from a different perspective than we would if we were ungrounded or fearful, anxious, depressed, whatever. So in those moments, sometimes those individuals are really looking for that design to happen. And then their higher self kicks in and says, this feels good. This does not feel good. I'm going down this way, not that way. So I'm really working with them in that form. But there are other individuals who come to me because they want to develop their own intuitive abilities. So they'll come and say, okay, here's I think I'm different, or something's odd. I don't know quite what's happening, but I would like to explore it. And then we would work with their team. So their angels, their guides, or, you know, their higher self, whatever is coming. And just trusting that whoever is coming to deliver the messages is there for their highest good. And then we develop, you know, based on my program, how they can use that program to develop those skills. And a lot of it is, you know, you have to be accountable to self. So if you're coming to me and saying, I want to learn how to be intuitive or really tap into this, there is that accountability I'm putting back upon them to say, try these exercises, do these affirmations, let's start to release some of these blocks or obstacles and identify them. Because if you're in to do it, you have to really do the work to get there to have the results that you want.
Yeah. And that's really important, is that work. And a lot of people don't think about it. Like, you have to do the work. I'm a big component on that. I'm very much you know, thinking about the work itself and how necessary it is and really important it is for us as individuals. If we're going down this path, we want to learn it, is to really do the work, you know, take self-responsibility. And, you know, you got to practice, you got to get in there, you got to figure out what's wrong. And it's nice that you have to give them the clarity to kind of figure out, because a lot of times we don't know. And it's always that under that surface, that hidden part of ourselves that we don't know, that is changing everything. And it's really important that. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love the idea. I wish I would have met you years ago, because you probably would have saved me a lot of time and money.
There's no time like the present.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm just thinking about it, it's like, man, there are so many times I can look back and think, man, I really wish I had some clarity. And I think it really came down to what you were saying, is groundedness. I just wasn't grounded. I couldn't get grounded. Can you maybe touch on what grounding is and what it really means to be grounded?
Absolutely. So when we have the connection to, I mean, we can probably all relate to what it feels like to be ungrounded or scattered, or, you know, I've got brain fog, or everything seems to be hard today. Like, I try to open the door and, you know, I drop my purse, or I turn on the coffee maker, forget to put the cup underneath, and there's, you know, so all of us can relate to all of us can relate.
Yes,
to
just preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, it's like, every single thing you try to do is difficult, funny story. I said to my son today, he had lost his driver's license, lost his passport. We've been trying to look for it. Then today, as he's going to go and get those things addressed, he lost his key to his car. And I said to him, this is painful, like painful. And he said, yeah, it's me living it. And I said, well, yeah, but I'm watching and it's still painful, you know? And I said, you're not grounded. So in terms of what grounded really is when we are on autopilot, because we have a lot of things we're worried about, children or spouses or bills, or, making sure you're safe, and your mind is really focused on a certain thing, but our body is doing something different. So the people that are, you know, turning on the coffee maker and forget the mug are ultimately thinking their mind is somewhere else, and they're saying, okay, I'm going to be late, so if I start the car right now and I get my shoes on and I'm going to do this while I'm trying to make this coffee. So that essentially is not the connectedness to your body, mind, and soul. So ungroundedness comes from the soul being outside of the physical body. And that's when we get things like mental illness, or we have things like physical illness, because when you're not grounded and your body and soul and mind are not connected, that's when you get the disease, right? So all of these things contribute to something higher, and at varying degrees can affect you a lot more. Like maybe it's something, an irritant, I lost my key today, or maybe it's I have chronic anxiety and it's not going away, or maybe I broke my leg. Whatever it is, you have to kind of ask yourself and reflect, where was I at this moment? And where, like, how could I have taken steps to kind of align better? And that kind of comes from society training us that multitasking is the way that we have to go. And if you can't multitask, this is actually something you need to work upon. I remember in the HR world, it was an actual problem. If you can't multitask, then we're going to create a plan for you to become a better multitasker. And I would say 9 people out of 10 have the courage to say, if I am multitasking, that means the one thing I'm supposed to be doing is not getting the attention that it needs. And all along, I'm like, yes. Like holla, because that's exactly what is actually happening here. But the world is like, no, 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 you have to do A, B, C, D, and E all at the same time. So we're creating that environment for us to become ungrounded, because that's how our mechanism of self-preservation happens. So our body and mind create this, okay, if I detach myself and allow my energy to be in all of these different spots, I'm going to succeed, it'll be successful, and at the end of the day, I'll just figure it out and I'll crash on the couch and not know what the heck happened until I wake up in the morning. So when we're grounded, we're saying, okay, hold on one moment, I'm going to get to this in 15 minutes, or can I call you back, I'm cooking dinner. So really intentionally focusing on one task at a time, and then also setting boundaries and knowing your limits. Like, it's okay to say no, you don't feel like going out tonight. And
hold on for a second. What was that? Is it okay to say no?
It's okay to say no.
It's okay to say no. Interesting. Yes. I love that. I absolutely love that, you know, because we've been so programmed. I know myself, it's those yes, yep, sure, yeah. And I catch myself, and it wasn't for actually doing work that I'd be able to set boundaries, go, no, I don't want to do that. I don't, yeah, that is so important. So sorry to just interrupt you there, but I was like, wait a minute. It's okay to say no. So for those who are listening or watching this video, it is okay. If you do not like something, it is okay to set boundaries. Very, very important. I think that is really key right now, is to set healthy boundaries is another thing too as well. So, you know, I really love how your philosophy is so in line with mine, and a lot of my own upbringing and teaching too as well. Is just a lot of those small little things like that. So very important, people. Set some healthy boundaries. It's okay to say no. And being grounded. Absolutely. So what are some of the techniques that we can be grounded? I know so much of my life has been ungrounded. So if somebody's listening to this right now and they're watching this on YouTube and they're kind of going, okay, I kind of get it what she's saying. I'm scattered. I need to get grounded. How can we get grounded?
That's the question. Okay, I know what it means, and that's me. Sign me up. Now, what the heck am I supposed to do about it?
Exactly.
And that's how you come to me, and then you're all of a sudden enlightened and find the clarity, and you're like, that's all I had to do. So some quick tips. Okay, so nature is a big deal. You know, the earth is providing such healing energy around us. So if you love to be outside, spend some time in nature. Go for a walk, a hike, you know, go swimming. Just sit by the water and watch it. All of the elements, the earth, the fire, the wind, all of these elements are going to automatically ground you. So if you're looking for something that's not going to take a lot of energy on your part in order to ground, just step outside, and nature will do the thing for you. You also, grounding is also important if you have bare feet. Like I hear this from a lot of parents. My kids won't wear socks. Like, I can't get my kid to keep his socks on. And I kind of chuckle, and I'm like, yes, because they know that they have to ground, and they can't ground if they're wearing socks. And they're like, so I shouldn't force them to wear socks? And I said, no, yeah, take off your socks right now.
You know what? It's interesting enough. I just had a podcast the other day, and we were talking about grounding, and it was very much what she said about grounding. And she went to the, I think it was the Amazon, and she talked about the natives, how they basically don't have shoes on. And she talked about grounding. And she goes, you need to be grounded and stuff like that. And it's interesting enough. I've been doing it, but for today, because literally before this podcast, I've been so ungrounded. I was trying to meditate and get connected. And it's just like, wait a minute. She's tapping into something here. It's like, wait a minute, I got to take those socks off. I always do my podcast now with bare feet. The good thing you only see this up. I mean, I still have pants on, but I mean.
It's so important. And again, like, how easy is that? How easy is that to just like walk around barefoot and then feel the connection? So fun fact about me, I love those fuzzy socks. I have to have socks on, but I also have to be grounded all the time. So I wear those fuzzy socks, and then when I'm walking, I can feel the fabric underneath my feet. So if you're like me and you hate to be barefoot, then wear a sock that has a fabric that when you're walking, you can actually feel the fabric, like as if you were standing on a carpet under your feet, because that moment takes you straight into that energy of grounding, so you can still receive the same benefits.
Oh,
so that's
interesting.
Important.
Okay. So nature. Love that idea. Bare feet too as well. Now I've also heard it's like, if you can, depending on the temperature and where you live, it's just actually go outside and barefoot, get on the ground. And even like for like a few seconds, just to connect with that is really important. So we have those techniques. Yeah. What about, now I heard sometimes meditation can actually unground you. What is your thought on that too as well? Because you can get outside the body.
So, okay, this may not be, this may be a frowned upon statement that I'm going to make with other people in my industry.
That's okay. It's my podcast,
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because this is 100% true. When you are meditating, what you are essentially doing is trying to achieve connection to the energy around you. So what happens is you are no longer within, you are now outside, or you are opening up your connection so that you can receive information. When that happens, how can you be grounded? Because you're opening up to someone else's energy. So let's put this into perspective. So if I'm meditating, I'm asking all of the energies to help me do so, right? So if I'm, trying to connect to my higher self in a meditation, or if I'm trying to relax or whatever, you're automatically going to have your spiritual team on the other side. So if we can visualize this as opening up the front door and allowing anybody who's standing outside to come into your home, and while you're letting them come into your home, you're sitting in the room quiet with your eyes shut, and you don't know who's coming in or when or how long they're staying, or if they're in their fridge or they're in your bathroom or what they're doing. So that is an ungrounded sense of feeling, right? You're going to want to know, okay, who's here and what is that person doing and how to connect to their energy. So yeah, so that'll probably cause a little bit of some, different thought processes, but
that's okay. That's the whole part of this podcast was to, expand the information and that's out there, because there's a lot of, disinformation out there, and, as my own personal journey too, as well. And in trying to be spiritual, and there's always this definition of what spiritual means. And I'm trying to break that mold and just try to inform people that there's other belief systems, there's other ways of doing things. You don't always have to be this, what they call so-called spiritual. Yeah. I mean, it's a way of life, it is, but in essence, it's not a particular way of being all the time.
Yes.
You don't always have to be a vegetarian. Yeah. You don't have to leave, certain things. You don't always have to do yoga. You don't have to do all these other things that what they call spiritual, but just living a good, decent life and being good, kind, and being an amazing person and living your life's purpose authentically. And I think that's one of the things that we struggle with, is living an authentic life, which is really important. That's why I was like, when Marianne told me, says, listen, I have this person, you got to talk to her. And it's like, okay. And it's like, I always kind of like, all right, okay, what kind of person this is? And then when I checked you up on the website, and it was like going, she's about clarity. And I'm like, yeah, that's the one. We got to have a talk about that, because I think it's really important, because I think that's where a lot of suffering is. I had a Buddhist priest on, and he talked about suffering is about our soul's purpose and our clarity and a living authentic life. When you're not living authentic, you're miserable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that is and that's, so in alignment with what you're doing and I'm doing, because I want to bring that awareness to people that you can have this fulfillment without the stress and pressures that other people's belief systems are putting upon you. Through that brings clarity. And when you're living your authentic life's purpose, you're doing so unapologetically, meaning you're not going to, worry that somebody else isn't going to be happy about what you're doing when you're doing something that's supposed to be what you're doing and serving, as long as you're not hurting other people in the process intentionally. Because there is that, you're right, just because people do yoga or because they believe in spirit or because they take deep breaths to ground during the day, that does not make them, living a spiritual lifestyle. It really goes down to, are you so open-minded and connected to the bigger picture that you're forgiving and loving of yourself and others? And there is no judgment cast upon that, because there's always multiple perspectives in what other people are doing. My mother was amazing at teaching me that from an early age, is, you don't know what other people are here for. You don't know what other people are experiencing. So something that we just saw happen isn't the whole picture. And so that I've always kept from her, because that is exactly what this is about. You might see somebody do a piece of something, but you didn't see the whole thing leading up, nor is it your purpose to be involved in what they're doing. Because if you're worried about what they're doing, that means you're not focused and grounded upon what you're supposed to be doing. So it really goes back to, if I'm leading this spiritual lifestyle and I want clarity, don't muddy your water by trying to figure out what the heck everybody else is doing, because now they're dirtying your pond. So keep your pond crystal clear and just focus on what it is you're doing. And if somebody does hurt you, or somebody does cause an issue that's causing you, emotional pain, you really have to kind of be enlightened to that point of where the clarity comes from is, could there have been a different perspective to this? What might they have thought about? And what's my contribution to this issue? Because it's always 50-50.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. That's well said. Again, there is that 50-50, and a lot of times we don't know what's going on, and we just see the after effect, and, we try to judge, and, it's something I struggled with years, and, I'm still being human. I have times, for the most part. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about too, as well, about with clarity and coaching, do you do any work with children? I think, getting them started at an early age is really important. And it's like, getting them to that point where they can connect and they can follow that. So they're not, 50 years down the road kind of figuring, okay, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
Are you doing anything right now with children at all, or?
So important. So important. So I'm in talks right now to try to get this. So I'm laughing inside because of the timing of this, right? I just had a conversation about children just this morning even. So now you're kind of validating and putting that nail in the coffin of like, this has to happen.
That's spirit. That is like, this is so spirit driven. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you for that, because yes. So all along I have always been driven towards children and their ability to, from the beginning, like live their authentic purpose. One of the biggest things that happens for children, and this goes back to the people that are leading the children, because there's also that, is you don't have to worry about your child coming into the world and having to be happy. That is not their main purpose in life. They're here because they have to learn the lessons the rest of us do. So if we're constantly trying to keep them in a state where you're supposed to be happy and nothing else matters, then they're having an unrealistic expectation of how to connect to themselves, because they're going to have that internal, pull of, this is how I feel I should be. This isn't going to make mom or dad or teacher happy, but then I can't do that because I have to keep, the waters level. So I think that that's what kind of draws me the most, is immediately getting to the generational belief systems, the generational karmic contracts, and also identifying with their higher self, because you have a higher self right away. Like, you don't turn 7 and all of a sudden you have a soul. Like, you have a soul immediately.
Yeah, that's always with you.
That's right. That's right. So I am in talks with trying to work with, I'm looking somewhere between 12 and 16 years old. That's the one I keep being drawn to, because that's where they're getting to that age where they're confused about where they're supposed to go, what they're supposed to believe, how they're supposed to believe it. And that's the age in which I'm noticing a lot of teenagers having issues with depression, anxiety, mental health issues, things like that. And if we're even talking about things like transgender or LGBTQ communities, you have a lot of that has to do with soul connection, incarnation, contracts, and things like that. So I think that 12 to 16 years old is a really big draw to me. And then also Psychic Kids United, with my colleague Liz Throp and Margaret Semple, they actually have Psychic Kids United. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out, because they have a lot of resources for children of all ages to connect to their intuitive abilities.
That's so wonderful. Yeah. Like that age group is, I think, so they're the ones right now, they're getting so much mixed messages, and you just see it out there, and it's so disheartening just to see this. And it's over and over. And it's just like this hate-filled driven stuff. And it's just like, they're at a time where their brains are so malleable, and they're trying to figure themselves out, and what their life purpose is. Their bodies are changing, their minds are changing. They're in that fragile state where it's like one wrong shift can send them down a path that really is not very productive, and they're going to go down a very hard road. So if they can give themselves clarity and kind of, like you said, be grounded, and they can figure out for themselves that they don't get all these mixed messages, they can weed through the bullshit. Yeah. They can actually do that. They do have the power, and actually empowering them to make the healthy choices for themselves. And like you said, not listen to the outside world. They know what's going on. We all do. And that's one of the things I love about this topic, is that we all know inside what we can do, what we're capable of doing. We just got to get in contact with it. We got to go looking for it. And if we clear out all that extra clutter, I think it's fantastic. When you were saying that, like, I'm still getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like, I just got the chills. Yeah. So I think you're on the right path on that, because I think it's so important, like with kids, to really help them with clarity. Really, really do.
And you know what the biggest block is that children and adults have in common, and why there's no clarity? Because we're all people pleasing. We're taught from an immediate thing. If you do good, I'll give you a candy. This didn't make mommy happy. You can't do that because the teacher said you shouldn't. You're not allowed to cross at this point. You have to go all the way down there to cross. You can't use this between the hours of 5 and 10. There's so much that in a little person's mind is trying to like discern of, if I do this, did I do bad? Because I know that I will be loved if I do good. I will be accepted if I do good. Therefore, the clarity piece is lost, because it's like, well, I know I want to do that, but if I don't, I'm not going to be loved, accepted, or taken care of. And I'm going to probably be punished or put on the outside or whatever. So that's the thing that the children and the adults have in common, is this like lack of identity through people pleasing, and knowing that there's so much to figure out, that if they misstep, that now everything is falling apart. Like, look at when we think about your day, back to the person that didn't put the cup in the coffee maker. Now, all of a sudden, their car doesn't start. They catch a train before they get to work. Their coworker's mad because they missed a meeting. Everything just snowballs.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day, your life sucks. Like, it's like you are so lost. You have no idea what's going on, and you just tap out. You're like, I'm done. This sucked. So I think that what it boils back down to, and that's what we kind of peel away when we're talking to people, is, what do you want? And it's okay to say it, because even in the throat chakra, we're talking about like, how do you unleash this stuff? Like, just say the words. Like, there's times where I'm sitting in front of the exam, just say it, like, you're okay, just say it. Because there's such that like resistance to, if I say it out loud, then, oh my God, my world's going to crash. Meanwhile, they say it out loud and their whole world just opened up. Like, it really is that fear.
Yeah, that's me right there. That was me. It still is me a bit, because for the longest time, I was in the spiritual closet. Yeah. There's very few people that I told, and because, everybody had this perception, and I, even myself, had this perception of who I was. I couldn't be a psychic medium. Oh my God, you're what? You're not a psychic medium. I said, well, yeah, I do have those gifts, I do. And, it took me a long time, and I had a lot of friends that encouraged me to do this podcast, because this is part of me speaking up. And I could feel it in my throat. like, it's still when I talk about it, and it's interesting. If I was to talk about trying to sell you a kitchen appliance, because that's what I used to do. I used to go on, travel around the world, sell, kitchen gadgets, on
Oh,
different
wow.
shopping channels. So that's easy for me.
Yeah.
So when my friend suggested me, Mike, you got to get a podcast going. And I thought to myself, there's no way I couldn't talk about a podcast about the stuff I really like to talk about. No, I can't do that. And it's funny, like, as I started doing this, I could feel my throat tightening up all the time. It's like that battle going on between the old people pleaser, because that was so ingrained in me. It's so true. And I still struggle with it. Not as bad as I used to. Like now I can say no.
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
I could set my boundaries.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting when you talk about that. It is so true. Like my throat, and it's getting so much better as I speak. The more I speak, like I just feel a little bit lighter. I can
Yeah.
talk to somebody like now. I can't go back now. This is
Mhm.
stuff is going worldwide. Like there's no like, yeah, it's out there
You're
now.
in it. You're committed now. No
It's,
turning back.
I'm yeah, like I've, after 10 episodes now into the can, I can't go back now. It's out there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You know what? And I pose this question to you and to others who are in that same role, because I was in that same spot. No, I have to do this because my happiness is going to be justified if I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I have an HR position. I work in a huge company. I have a car and children and pets and a house. Like those are the things that people put upon you to say, this is what you will feel good. And then, right, what happens? We get those things and we're like, oh my God, something is wrong with me because I don't feel happy. Something's missing. I don't know what to do. And then there's that pressure upon yourself saying, wait a minute. All of these people told me if I got ABCD, I was going to be happy. And now I'm not. So something's wrong. I'm broken. And then it starts. Then it's
Yes.
like, whoa, my earth is just shattered. But if I pose this question to you and say, what if you think of yourself as you are the spiritual being and you have just created all of those rules upon yourself, and that's what is not in alignment? So essentially, you being a psychic, you being a medium, you doing this podcast, connecting people to the awareness and education of this. What if I said to you, this is what you're supposed to be doing, and this is the truth of you, and all of these other things like sales and whatever else, those are the things that would be more like, oh my God, I can't speak about doing those things because those things weren't in alignment with me. Because we are that spiritual being. We are that person that comes in human form and says, I'm supposed to be connecting for the higher purpose. Now, in order to make myself and my ego feel better, I have to have the car. I have to have the house. I have to have the job. I need to make this much money. Those are the things that are false and out of alignment. Those are the things that now in the place I'm in, I'm like, oh, this is embarrassing. Be humble. Like you don't need to have all of these crazy things because those things didn't provide humanity and awareness, mindful, nothing. So the question is, what spirit you want to be in human form versus what human are you trying to be?
Wow. That's pretty deep. I love that. That is a really good question. That's a good question.
For you.
Well, it's for me, but it's for our listeners too, because, that's one of the things I loved about like podcasting is that, you're connecting with so many people because, even though the idea is to connect with thousands of people and that's what we want to do, but I always say that if you can just connect with one,
Yes.
if somebody's just listening one time and that they can get some information that's going to help them on their path, that they're going to say, hey, this guy here, he's been through, he's been through the ringer. He's done some crazy stuff. Things have happened to him, but you know what? He keeps going. He keeps thinking about stuff. And he's like, that type of information, that type of, inspiration is so important. And I think, from what you talk about, I think it's so important. And it's like, this is one of the things I love is that they can send more people to you to get help. And that's one of the things I love about this channel. It's like, I want to be the people on my show. I want them to be so busy.
Yeah.
I want them to be absolutely crazy busy. I want them to call me up or get on the email and say, Mike, where I was on the podcast and now I'm so super busy. I don't know what to do.
Yes.
That's the goal I want. And there's just so many people doing so many amazing things. And I think it's just important at this time that's what it's all about. It's just helping everybody else. Yeah.
Absolutely. what you're doing is connecting people so that they don't feel alone in what they're thinking, because both you and I can understand what that feels like to be in your body, mind, and soul, and maybe not having the information available to you in order to even piece together what it is that you're feeling, experiencing, and knowing. And so when these formats and platforms exist, it really is breaking down those barriers, normalizing this, because this should be something as common as the air we breathe. Like, how do you connect to your soul? How do you know what you're doing in your life's purpose? That should be as important as the nutrition and air and health and safety of our bodies.
Yeah, well said. A big influence of mine was Edgar Cayce and his work and stuff like that. And I actually read one of his books here. And, it's funny, when we're speaking of topics in this book here, can you see that? Finding Your Soul's Purpose.
Yes. Awesome. Oh my goodness, I have to read that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. It's based on his works, but you'll be so in line with yours. Like, it was like listening. It's almost like you wrote this book.
Oh,
it's interesting. A lot of the information that you say and what you talk about is basically, a lot of it's in the book too, as well.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's really interesting. And it's like, wait a minute. Okay. And it's like, I just read that book, and it's like so much insight, so much clarity. And it was like, wow. And I think it was interesting when we talk about spirit bringing two people together to talk about things.
Yeah.
This was like so predestined on this.
It was the divine connection. Yeah, I love it. This is, I could talk about this forever, because like, you can relate to anything out of all your experiences day by day. Like, this just applies to everything, and it makes you feel like, I don't know about you, but I feel comforted knowing that this is like, we're working through it. Like, you're getting to those pieces. I always laugh at myself now, because before I would avoid things that made me feel uncomfortable, like, maybe disagreements or like things that, we have to deal with. But now I figured it out. I'm like, if I just like head on do this, then I'm going to be done it faster, which means that my pain and suffering ultimately will be decreased by like 85% if I just like get this over with now. So now I'm just like, okay, hit it head on, get to it. And that fear of like, oh, this discomfort is going to go away. But it's interesting about the book that you're just reading, because someone else just said that to me the other day. It was a whole different book. And they said, have you seen this book? Because you just sound like everything that you're saying is through this. And what I feel about that is the collective messaging. Like, it's coming to me, it came to that author, it came to this author, and a lot of us are getting the same collective messaging. And all that is to me is just validation that we're working out of love and light, and that if people can hear it and open up to it, then we can make our lives a little bit easier.
Well said. Well said. Well, my dear, we're almost out of time. Can you believe it? Yes, it is flying by. I'm just looking at my clock here, and it's like, wow, okay, we're almost done here. We got to wrap up. And it's like, so amazing. Yeah. So how can they find you? So if people are listening right now and they want to, book a session, they want to find out more about you, what you do, stuff like that, where can they find you?
Amber-price.com is my website. I also have Amber Price, the Clarity Expert, on Instagram and Facebook. And I have individual sessions, as well as I own the Clarity Academy, which is an online platform where people can come in and learn more about things in a community supportive environment. So if you're looking for a group or you're looking for individual, you can connect there. And I also have the Giant TV's The Insiders Show as well, and that you can find on Facebook. And my co-host Liz Throp and I do the podcast as well, and we talk about all the things like as if you're a fly on the wall in the medium life.
Wow, fantastic. You know what? I'm so appreciative of you for being on my show today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love your energy. Like, you're just beaming. Like, you have a beautiful smile, and it just glows. And I'm so happy that you came on the show and really talked about clarity, because I think a lot of people are looking for that at this time. So that being said, again, thank you so much for being on my show. You're listening.
I'm so full of gratitude for you, and I feel the same about your energy. You just have like this halo around you as well. And I'm just always interested in being able to connect to like-minded people. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. Well, that being said, guys, you're listening to the Metaphysical Mentor podcast with Michael Philpott. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.